Hello, and welcome to Manitoba Agriculture Crop Talk webinar. If you have any questions during the live presentation today, you can type them into the Q&A located on the bottom toolbar of the Zoom screen, and we will answer them at the end of the presentations. This webinar is being recorded, and those registered for Crop Talk will receive a link to the recording. Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron. I'd like to welcome everybody to the September 3rd edition of Crop Talk. I'd also like to mention that I have a cricket, so you'll be hearing him throughout the presentation today, so I apologize for that. But anyways, we had a good week this past week of weather for producers to get some harvest done, and it's amazing how fast harvest can happen when you get good weather and long days in the field, early morning starts, and basically quitting because you want to quit and getting tired because you realize the next day is going to be another long day. So we had some nice warm weather, some good conditions for harvest, and we got a lot of acres combined this past week. Little bit of rain on Monday here that slowed everybody down again, but I actually talked to some producers yesterday. They did get back out later yesterday afternoon, the guys that didn't get any major amounts of rain. There was some a system that went through kind of that north of Russell area up into the Benito Inglis area. They did get some hail and did get some damage to some of the crop. Haven't heard how severe it is there yet, but there was some damage there. And I guess besides that, that's kind of this past week for getting harvest done. So this week we're gonna look at the 2025 harvest and see what's been happening in the field. There's been a few things going on that we'll look at. Also, there's been some questions coming in, so there's some harvest issues questions, I guess I call it, and some planning for 2026 questions coming in. So we'll try to answer those as we go through the day. So where are we? Where are we now? Well, the winter wheat and fall rye harvest is complete. It's probably in most areas been complete for about a week already. We're seeing average yields anywhere from that, you know, 50 to 60 range for fall rye, 60 to 90 bushel range for winter wheat. Quality has been good. We talked about it last week. There was some piebald showing up in some of the winter wheat, and as Alex and Ann mentioned, that could be the fact that the crop could have done a little bit better, could have used a little bit more nitrogen at the time, and just had some more starch build up in the plant, and that's what's causing the piebald. But as we discussed last week, we got producers out in the field now starting to plant the 2026 crop, and I thought it'd be a good time to put up some of the seeding dates and deadlines for crop insurance. So when you look at the fall rye, you've got the August 15th to the 25th, and I guess winter wheat's the same, August 15th to the 25th. That's full coverage, and then for the extended coverage is the 26th to the 30th. Again, these are the dates. If you have any questions regarding the dates, wouldn't hurt to give crop insurance a call just to make sure that nothing has changed. But that's kind of what you're looking at. So I think everybody's still has a lot of time to get the crop. And I think one of the things that's maybe going to hold up some producers is producers that are wanting to seed into canola stubble. We haven't got a lot of canola harvested yet, and those areas or those fields that producers like to seed into may not quite be ready yet. So, but again, weather forecast was hopefully going to give us another chance to get out there and get going again, and after this next couple of days. The field pea harvest, again, it's complete. I would say in pretty much every area. If there is some fields out there, there'd be some fields that maybe producers were having some issues harvesting and they were being a little bit more difficult. There are some areas that did receive some pretty good rainfall events kind of right before harvest would have got nicely started. Some of those areas might still have some wet areas in the field that'll make harvest a little bit more difficult. Maybe some of the peas went down in some of those areas and making it a little bit more difficult to harvest. But we had a pretty good year of pea production this year. Yields did vary a fair bit, anywhere from the 30 to about 75 to 80 bushel range. Probably a good average of 60. I think in general, most producers didn't report too much of disease issues. I think a lot of the crop did stand fairly well and was fairly easy to harvest for most guys this year. So I think in general, the pea crop was good, and probably for next year, I think we've got some guys already planning on planting peas again in their rotation. So the crop report hasn't come out yet. It'll be out later today. So right now, I've got the percentage of harvest completed from last week, and I left that up there because it'll be just something kind of a gauge we can look at, and kind of I'll throw in some estimates as we're going. But to start off with this with cereals, we're looking at about I would say in general, probably the report is going to come out where spring wheat, we are probably going to be in that 40-50% complete now. I think we had a good week of harvest. And one of the things I did notice this week, this past week, I was out and I got a couple of rides on a couple of combines, different combines, and it's amazing how they've changed and how quickly producers can get fields done now. Some of the guys, and again, it does help that the crop is standing good this year, and producers are able to harvest a nice standing crop. But 4.5 mile an hour with a 50-foot header, you can get a lot of crop taken off in a short period of time, and so that's where you get a week like last week, you can get a lot of crop taken off. So with the wheat, like I mentioned, approximately 40% we'll see later on today as where we sit as a province. I'm thinking yields. They've actually, I think, as guys got more into the crop, we started to see a little higher average than we were predicting at the beginning. A lot of that, 60 plus bushel crops coming off. So I think it'll be fairly easy to say we're going to have a good average of 50 to 60 bushels on wheat, and probably in some areas even higher. We good protein levels on the spring wheat, good test weight levels on the spring wheat. So we're looking at 13 to 15% protein, pretty good quality. I haven't heard of any downgrading as of yet. Again, it's be probably area by area, which will be different maybe after this last rain. And we have been getting some damp mornings that might be causing some bleaching in some of the more mature crops. But I think in general right now we're still looking at a 1 and a 2 for most crops. Fusarium, right now, I don't see or haven't heard of any people talking about downgrading because of fusarium damage or any other damage, whether it be any insect damage or anything like that. So again, um, uh, good harvest, good year so far for the spring wheat, as we are approaching that halfway point of harvest on the spring wheat. When you look into barley, there's another crop that we're probably going to be getting in that 50% complete range. It's a crop that a lot of guys were hitting last week as it was dried down fairly well. Again, barley is looking like a crop that is going to do fairly well again this year. We're looking at probably hearing some test weights in barley of anywhere from that, you know, 50 plus range in some areas. So again, some good test weights, some good quality, and yields, anywhere from that, 50 to 90. I have heard in some areas where some guys were actually breaking the 100. So again, some good yields in the barley. And when we look at oats, there's a crop there that has created a few issues for some of the producers. Um, it's one of the crops that is staying green. The straw is staying green, even though the seed may be dry. Its producers are having a difficult time trying to strike cut oats right now, and that's why we are seeing a lot of the oats being swathed. It just that last rain we got seemed to keep it green, keep the straw green, and actually some of the fields where producers have had it swath for a little bit of time right now, we're actually starting to see some fall regrowth in some of that stubble. So those stubbles are actually starting to green up. So it's going to be one where I hope we don't get too much more rainfall before it gets harvested. But again, that's the biggest issue with oats right now. For some of the crop that has been harvested, the yields are, I would say, a good average, around that 80 to 100. And we're, again, like always, probably seeing some of those yields in some areas in that 120 to 130 range. I have heard some test weights in that 40-pound plus range. So again, good test weight on oats, which will be good for marketing. I think all the test weights this year are going to be definitely an advantage to producers because pounds make bushels, and I think that's going to be a good thing when we come to marketing. So when looking at the cereal crops in general, I think right now the majority have been desiccated already and are just waiting for their turn to harvest. I think producers were just going from field to field right now. It was, you finish the one wheat field, you just turn into the next one, and everything just seemed to be ready to go. So whether it be barley or wheat, and like I mentioned on the oats, I think some swathing had to be done to get that completed. When you look at the quality throughout the whole province, I don't think that's going to change much. I think a lot of it is going to stay where it is. So we're probably the biggest percentage is in the good range. When you look at soybeans, there's a crop that definitely took advantage of the rain that we got about 2 weeks ago. There's a crop there that is just uh, potted right to the top in most areas that I've been seeing. The pods have filled out really nicely. A lot of full pods right now, and when you look at the stages we're in right now, we're ranging anywhere from R6 to R7 stage. So R6 would be when the pods are right full and the seeds have filled the pods right full, to R7 where we're starting to see some color change in the pods already. There are some reports of some more advanced crops in the central region, and we're even in those areas starting to see some leaf drop already. So the crop definitely took advantage of the rain, and this last week of heat has probably helped out a lot as well. So again, the soybean crop bounced back quite a bit. There was a lot of people thinking that because of the dry conditions we had, that we weren't going to see as good a yields. And right now, the potential is there for, I would say, an average yield. I don't see a lot of disease issues in the soybeans right now. There has been the odd report of some sclerotinia showing up in some areas, but nothing to the point where there's any concerns or any damage being done as of yet anyway. So again, just a crop that's taken advantage of the late fall moisture we had, which is kind of that right time for soybeans to get that good rainfall. And they're just a picture of the pod fill and seeing the leaf color changing already, and the seeds filling the pods right full. So it's again just moving along. Canola, there's a crop that is going to be variable throughout the whole province this year. And I think one of the things we noticed that right from the start this spring, where we had a wide range of seeding dates. And because of that, we're having a wide range of maturity times. But in general, right now, a lot of the crop is coming in, and a lot of producers are either getting close to the stage of swathing or spraying the crop. The biggest issue that we're seeing in a lot of the canola fields this year is we had more weeds showing up than usual, I would say, this year. And as the season goes on, some of those fields that were weedy are starting to get a little bit worse as some of those weeds start to peak above the crop canopy and start showing themselves. And I think we're seeing that in a lot of fields throughout the province. And the biggest question, I guess, producers were asking is, should I spray or should I swath it? And like I mentioned, some fields are being swathed for that reason right now, but I think it's a small percentage still compared to I guess in past years when the majority of the fields were swathed. We're still going to seeing a lot of fields being sprayed right now, whether it's being done with high clearance or whether it's being done with a airplane. And I think the biggest thing producers are talking about, anyways, when I'm talking to them, is increasing their water volumes so they're getting better coverage. So this is a mark for Kim, our weeds person, for telling producers we need to increase our water volumes to get better weed control and better coverage. I think some producers are starting to take it to heart, because I think a lot of the wheat that got sprayed earlier on was still in that 5 gallon range, and I think a lot of producers now in their canola are using 10 gallons. And truthfully, some of them are even talking about going even a little higher than that, because they're wanting to get good coverage on some of those weeds. So um, that's a good thing that's happening out there. Let's make better use of our chemicals that we're using, and best thing we can do is get good coverage. Sunflowers. Sunflowers range right now from late flowering to the R6, R7 stage. And there are some disease issues showing up in some areas. We are starting to see a bit of sclerotinia show up in some of the sunflower fields. Some of it is on the heads, and some of it is on the stems. And so we are starting to see some of that. One thing we mentioned last week was avian control for bird repellent, and we had there's talk about it being getting the emergency registration in sunflowers and how well it's going to work. And I think it was John Gavloski was on, and he mentioned that it's still a fairly new product, and because of it being a fairly new product, that we're not 100% sure as to what we might see for damage. We could see some leaf discoloration. Uh, and but it can be applied right up until the day of harvest. So it's a product that I think that a lot of producers are hoping it'll work. We do see a lot of issues with sunflowers when we get a lot of bird damage, especially in areas that are have a lot of sloughs or a lot of marshy type land where birds can kind of have the best of both worlds, lots to eat and lots of water close by. So we do see a lot of that. So I think it's something that we're glad to see come on board, and hopefully it's going to work for us. Aaron, I see. Is there a question that's come up?
There is a comment in southern Manitoba, guys are taking off 80 to 95 bushels an acre for spring wheat, and it's not uncommon.
Yeah, that's where I mentioned that we were hearing some yields in that 80 plus range, and I definitely have seen them, and it's not just in the southern part. It moves throughout the whole province. I think what brings the average down is some of the areas that maybe were lacking some of that timely rains. Also, some of the areas that last fall maybe went into fall a little drier than normal, and just didn't have enough to keep the crop growing between the rains. But yes, definitely that 80 to 90 bushel range on spring wheat. I actually when I was mentioned that I was on a combine for a ride there, they were doing spring wheat, and there was places in the field that the monitor was in the hundreds. So again, it's not uncommon. One of the things when I was there, we were talking with the producer. We were talking about if we're starting to see. Some of the potential of some of these new varieties that we've been growing over the past couple of years. Maybe we're starting to between our management practice of maybe throwing a little bit extra fertilizer on them, maybe and getting into some of those higher yield potentials when we get the right growing conditions. And in some areas, we did get the right growing conditions for cereals, and we're seeing that throughout all the cereal crops. Like when you look at the barley and you look at some of the oat seeds that are coming off. And the other thing that I kind of, when I see the right growing conditions, I'm seeing this late rainfall we had definitely helped fill a lot of those heads and increase the test weights as well. So I think that's helping our overall yields too. So um, yeah, I definitely have I've heard and seen some of those yields, and it's good to see because it'll make up for maybe any drops in prices we'll see as the markets go on throughout our our marketing season here. So yeah, thanks for the comment, and a good comment. And fall work has started. I've seen producers out in the field starting to work some stubble up already. So not only are we in the middle of harvest, but we're also preparing for the 26 crop. So when you get a spare minute, I guess guys have a spare guy sitting around. They're not waiting, they're getting ready to go. And I think that's some of the things that we'll maybe have some questions as we get into our crop scouting panel today as to preparing for the 26 crop year. And with that, I think we'll jump into the crop scouting panel. And we do have question to start off, and this one will be for Marla. And when is the best time to start soil sampling for next year? And how does weather play a role in when we should look at timing wise?
That's a good question and definitely very timely. So quite often when we look at, say, the Manitoba Soil Fertility Guide, we refer to waiting a little bit later in the fall until soil temperatures have dropped in that like below 10 degrees, even ideally below 5 degrees, because that's when you see biological activity slowing down. So the potential for things like mineralization of nitrogen, which is going to increase some of that nitrogen coming out of that immobilized organic nitrogen content, would increase. So it's going to give you a bit of a more accurate number. Now, that being said, that's kind of the general rule of thumb, but obviously it's not always practical in all conditions. And so when we're talking about trying to get on a little earlier, there's nothing wrong, especially in a cereal crop, with going out behind the combine. And you just showed that image of, fall tillage happening already and talking about fall work happening. If you are going to be sampling, you would prefer to get that soil sampling done before that fall tillage is done. And that's going to give you a bit of a more accurate reflection of how much of those things like phosphorus and potassium are in the soil, the things that are kind of cycled towards the surface and are found in that top 6-inch sample, because you get a more accurate 6-inch sample depth before you've actually worked the soil. So that would be one reason why you'd want to get out a little earlier rather than waiting until later in the fall when those soil temperatures have dropped. The other thing is that because cereal stubble has such a high carbon content, the risk or amount of mineralization that might happen in the fall is pretty low. So it's more likely that some of that nitrogen might be tied up temporarily as that cereal stubble is breaking down. So I would say that, going out and taking those samples earlier is not going to kind of reflect a change in those numbers if you had waited, say, another month or two until those soil temperatures have dropped. If you're sampling behind peas, that could be a little different. Again, the C to N ratio is a little lesser, so there's more of a potential for that nitrogen to come out of that pea stubble and increase before freeze up. But if we're talking about cereal stubble, that chance of change is very low. The other thing is every once in a while, we have one of those falls where things kind of change and we weren't expecting it and things get really wet. Obviously, we don't want to have all of that water coming late in the fall. Although sometimes it does help for next year's soil moisture levels. But given that we sometimes have those years where, things go awry. And so getting ahead of the game and getting that sampling done when you've got time before conditions change can always be a good thing. And then, of course, if you sample earlier, you have more time to use that information. So if you are looking to fall soil sample because you're planning for fall fertility, then getting out there a little bit earlier is actually beneficial because now you have more time to get those analyses back and be able to utilize them in the field.
Okay, and this question just come in regarding sulfur fines. Have used it every year and was wondering if there's a too early time for putting it on.
Okay, if we're talking about like elemental salt or not, sorry, sulfate fines, like using, so if it's a sulfate form, the risk of loss of the sulfur, the sulfate form, is pretty low unless you are on a field that has a high leaching risk. This would be the other place where soil sampling early on sandy soils, where all of a sudden you could get a bunch of rain, could actually change those numbers in terms of having some of that leaching. But the sulfate form does not have a volatilization risk. The ammonium that comes along with that ammonium sulfate fine does have a volatilization risk. So if it's on the surface, you might lose some of that. But in terms of the sulfate form, there isn't a risk if you're broadcasting that on in terms of the potential for loss. And unless you had like a lot of rain on a very sandy, light soil, something that has that potential for a lot of leaching, the risk of loss is pretty low in the fall.
Okay, good. Thanks, Marla. Okay, this question will be for Anne. Falling numbers. This producer was starting to, I guess, haul some grain to the elevator, and they were using falling numbers. And I know we've talked about this before in the past, but he wasn't aware of how exactly these, why they use the numbers and what the number means. So, Anne, if you could maybe walk us through that.
Sure. Yeah. And I think falling numbers, so it's a measure of, so falling numbers assess wheat quality and the effects of sprout damage. So we do in many areas of the province, sprout damage is definitely a concern this year because we have had multiple rainfalls on mature fall rye or wheat. So it just evaluate the falling number test evaluates the amount of sprout damage in the grain by measuring the amount of an enzyme called alpha amylase in the sample. So when wheat seeds or fall rye begins to sprout in the head prior to harvest, the quality of the seed can degrade quickly. And this is really just quality for baking. So when sprouting occurs, that alpha amylase enzyme begins to break down the starch in the grain into simple sugars. So this impacts bread quality. And bakers need a certain amount of this enzyme in their flour to break down the starch into sugars, which feeds the yeast, which allows fermentation to occur. So if those starches are already being broken down into sugars in the head, then it doesn't allow the bread to um, ferment and bake properly. So when we do see sprouted wheat making bread, the bread can be darker in color, the loaf can be smaller in size, and then could have very large or uneven holes throughout the bread. So that's kind of the issue that bakers face, which is why the elevator doesn't want sprouted wheat. And sometimes sprouted wheat is visible, and sometimes it starts to sprout and there's nothing that you can see in the kernel that's actually looks sprouted, but those starches have already started to be broken down. So how that's tested is it's actually the time in seconds for a stir to fall through a slurry of ground wheat. So the wheat gets ground in the lab. A slurry is made with water and the wheat, and then this plunger moves through that slurry. So that's actually the falling number is measuring the number of seconds it takes for the plunger to fall through that slurry. So the faster it falls, the more alpha amylase is present, and the slower it falls, um, uh, the less sprouting damage has occurred. So uh, the minimum requirements for falling number are largely determined by industry, and most shipments must have a falling number of 300 seconds or higher. So that means it must take at least 300 seconds for that plunger to fall through the wheat. So most Canadian wheat varieties, like this is something that's tested during the registration process, and the falling number would be, over 350 seconds in general. But that's something that, if we do have sprouting in the field, then we can have decreased falling number values, and then could be potentially an issue. This isn't something that's usually measured at the elevator, but it's something that could be a quality determination.
Okay, good. So the higher the number, the better.
Yes.
Okay, and the lower the number means I'm going to have holes in my bread.
And potentially just a smaller bread loaf. And
Okay.
just like for information, in Swift Current, the breeder there does actually do sprouting tests on all of the wheat for all of the new wheat varieties. So they actually take like a kind of like a bundle of wheat, and they put it in the greenhouse under like misting conditions for I can't remember how long they put it in the greenhouse for, but they actually mist that wheat and then assess sprout damage after a certain number of time, because they really want to make sure that the wheat that's being produced in Canada has some sprout resistance in there already. So Seed Manitoba does have sprouting resistance numbers that come from that Swift Current study.
Oh, okay, well, that's good to know. Um, Another question for you, kind of, well, it's not really related to this, but it was regarding the comment that came in and regarding spring wheat and some of the high yields we're seeing. What do you think, or why do you think to talk spring wheat yielding 90 to 100 bushels an acre is kind of new, I think. What do you think might be the reason we're seeing some of those high yields this year?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I personally have been a bit surprised at some of the yields we've heard, because they have been quite good. I guess, yeah, it would just be, I don't have like a solid answer other than that would be a combination of like the good genetics that people are choosing and good agronomic practices. So, even though in most areas of the province we did see low amounts of rainfall in May and June, it was enough to get that wheat started and up out of the ground. And yeah, perhaps just more practices that conserve moisture in the soil was very helpful. So just, the general practices that farmers are using, and combined with some of the good genetics in wheat. So I don't have a good answer, but I've also been pleasantly surprised at the wheat yields we've been seeing.
Yeah, no, I kind of agree exactly with what you said. I think our management plus some of the newer varieties were just continually to improve on what we're doing there. And even right from seeding, I think a lot of producers have really concentrated on making sure they're putting the seed into a good seed bed and just getting it done properly, I think is. So I think, yeah, I just think management and varieties are definitely helping.
Yeah.
Okay. Question for John Gavlosky. John, I was out in a soybean field and farmer was saying it looked sickly from when he was driving by. So I walked out there and I grabbed a few pictures and what's going on here?
Yeah, so that's spider mite webbing that you see in the photos. So if there's a bit of that, it's often a lot more common around field edges. So when you're driving by and looking in, it can be very noticeable if there's been high levels of spider mites. Often, as you move into the field, you'll see less of that. There can be exceptions where the spider mites are well into the fields, but often there is a heavy edge effect. Right now, there's really no concern. In fact, what I would do as a first step is shake some of the plants and areas with the webbing over a tray. It can be a white tray or bucket or something. Something black is even better because the mites show up really good on it. The spider mites themselves, they're really tiny. They're just under a half millimeter long. So they're tiny little things. But the one that's common in the soybeans is called two-spotted spider mites. So they've got a couple darker dots on them. So if you shake them onto something, you can see these little specks moving around. So you would know that they're still there. Um, Sometimes if we've had some damp, humid weather for a few days, populations will start to really decline. There's some pathogenic fungi that can really knock the population back. So um, don't assume because there's webbing that there's mites there. The mites may have naturally disappeared for various reasons. So good to check. But also staging is a big thing you need to consider. The spider mites can do significant enough damage that they could be worth controlling. During that R4 stage, what they call the full pod stage, through R5, the beginning seed stage, when the seeds are filling. But generally, once the soybeans reach R6, where the full seed stage, where the seeds are developed, spider mites will have less impact on the yield. So staging is certainly one thing to consider. And in this case, you're well past the damaging stages of the soybeans. So yeah, so spider mites are what would be causing that.
So when you look at the webbing over top of on the picture on the left there, where it looked like there could have been maybe pods developed underneath, or were going to develop underneath that webbing, like would they have caused those pods to abort, or what would they?
Yeah, it looks like there's possibly seeds still in those pods, but certainly heavier populations like that would have an impact on yield, at least in those areas. It would be very rare to see a whole field that looks like that. Usually, that degree of webbing and spider mites is often on. It's usually a patch around a field edge. It's very rare to see that intensity well into a field, but certainly in those areas you would have yield impacts.
Okay, good. Thanks, John.
You're welcome.
Okay, we've been having some change in the weather here the last couple of days. We went from 30 degrees to zero at my place this morning. So I thought it'd be good to get Allison to come on and maybe give us a little bit of information as to well, some of the weather that might be coming up. So Allison, if you can, I think you got a couple slides maybe if you want to grab the screen.
Sure. Just 1 second. I got it all set up, but forgot to press share. Okay. And there, how do we look?
Okay, I still don't see your screen.
Okay. Oh,
And presenter mode.
there. How are
Perfect.
we now? Okay, sorry about that. So I have a few slides just kind of with a little update on what we're seeing um, up till yesterday. So this is just a shot of the a total accumulated precipitation that we've seen since May 1st. And you can see that overall we've had drier than normal conditions for the majority of the province, with the exception of the far southwest corner. Most of the southwest and central regions have accumulated over 180 millimeters throughout the season. However, that is lower than normal for the whole season. The only a couple of exceptions are again in that far southwest corner where we're seeing near or above normal accumulations, as well as a few pockets around the Neepawa area and the Portage Starbuck area. Still remain dry, below 60% of at the 30-year average moisture in the Interlake and a good portion of the Northwest as well. This is just a little precipitation summary of what we've seen over the last month. The highest monthly precipitations, the highest daily, and the highest hourly precipitation. So the precipitation was enough to kind of offer some relief in a few areas. However, some of these big storms, we might not have seen all of that precipitation actually infiltrating into the soil with some of those extreme rainfalls. So the highest monthly precipitation we saw was in Portage, and that was just over, the majority of that fell over the August 20th and 21st, and that was 197 millimeters for the whole month. And our highest hourly precipitation was at Ethelbert on August 8th, and that was also the highest daily precipitation that we saw throughout the month of August. So we had some big storms. Again, most of them were in the northwest and kind of central regions and very isolated. So we had some questions even during that Portage storm. There was a lot of variation just in a 20-mile radius. Even in the city of Winnipeg, there was, I think, a 60 millimeter difference between the southwest corner of Winnipeg and the northeast corner. So very variable and very tough to kind of sum up all of the province conditions in one little snapshot when the conditions have been so variable. Our current soil moisture, so this is a snapshot of the moisture on September 1st. We're seeing again those very dry conditions persistent in the Interlake. And the rest of the province really spotty. So again, it kind of shows what we were seeing with that precipitation. There's a dark, very wet spot at Kane here, and that was the area that received the most rainfall on September 1st, so it's not unexpected that it would be very wet there. But really variable. We have spots, localized spots of very dry to dry conditions, a few spots of wet conditions, and this is all overlaid the optimal region as well. So very variable, again, depending on where those storms hit and how that soil is retaining the moisture as well. At the deeper soil depths, we're seeing similar trends. So again, dry to very dry conditions persisting through the Interlake and along the southern region of Lake Winnipeg there. The southwest and southern parts of the central region are showing wet conditions. And again, the rest of Agro-Manitoba has localized wet conditions, localized dry conditions, and kind of the majority is showing optimal at the deeper depths. Keeping in mind, again, I'll just reiterate that this is like a snapshot of those conditions on the 1st. So things do change quite a bit, and we always recommend taking your local conditions into account. In terms of corn heat units and growing degree days, the growing degree days showed a similar trend to this map as well. Throughout the whole season, we saw near or slightly above heat unit accumulations for the majority of the province. A lot of those warm temperatures occurred at the beginning of May, and then since then we've seen them on average pretty close to normal. So this map is showing most regions are showing between 100 and 110% of the 30-year average for total corn heat units accumulated this growing season. And it's that time of year where we start to think about frosts. So this is a long-term map using interpolated data from Manitoba Agriculture weather stations and Environment Canada weather stations based on interpolated data from 1961 to 2023. So we have updated these on our website this year. And so the average means there's about a 50% risk so that the first fall frost would be later than the values shown here. So there's a 50-50 chance. So we're seeing in the Northwest, first fall frost dates usually range between September 17th and the 23rd. And then farther south in the central and eastern regions, we're seeing that closer to the end of the month around September 26th to 29th. At the 25% risk, so this would be the frost would be expected earlier than these dates, 1 out of every 4 years. Again, based on the same interpolated data, we're seeing that there's a 25% risk in the Northwest that those dates would happen before September 21st. So that's that like kind of bright bluey green area. And then in the central region, it's a 1 out of 4 years risk that the first fall frost would fall between September 21st and 24th in the central region. And then here's the 10% risk. So same interpolated data. However, this would be a 1 in 10-year risk that the frost would be earlier than the values shown on this map. We have had a couple of stations report below 0 temperatures last week in the far east. But I think that was only 2 stations, and one does frequently report low temperatures due to its location. So we are keeping an eye on those conditions and the extended forecast. So up until probably Sunday of this week, the predictions that I've seen, the lowest temperatures, again, these are based on Environment and Climate Change Canada forecasts. The lowest temperatures will probably be in the southwest area around Brandon, Melita, and they're forecasting lows of about +2. So we're getting close. In terms of the monthly temperature forecast produced by Environment and Climate Change Canada, this was issued on September 1st. Those regions that have no color on the map indicate a equal probability that temperatures will be above, below, or near normal for the next month on average. So this isn't max or min temperatures, just the average temperatures for the month are predicted. There's a 30% chance that it'll be above, 30% chance that it'll be below, and a 30% chance that it'll be near normal. The temperature anomaly forecast, again, shows a similar thing. So it shows how the difference that might occur in temperatures compared to the average. And the majority of Manitoba is like in between that 0.25 to maybe 1 degree above normal. So again, it kind of falls into that equal chance that it might be above normal or below or at normal. So not a lot of information there. And then in terms of the long-term forecasts for the next 3 months, so this covers the average temperatures and precipitation predicted for September, October, and November. We're seeing a slight probability, about a 50 to 60% probability that temperatures in Agro Manitoba will be above normal. Again, it doesn't say how much above normal, when those above normal temperatures will happen within those 3 months. Just saying on average, we might be expecting above normal temperatures. And in terms of precipitation, we're seeing that white area again, indicating that there's the same probabilities that precipitation will be above, near, or below normal. So really are unsure in terms of the 3-month forecast in terms of precipitation. So, and that's all I have for my little summary there. So.
Okay, thanks, Allison. So we're looking at potential for some cooler days over the next couple of few days anyways. And I think the weather this morning said Thompson was -1, and like I said before, it was zero in the Rossburn Shoal Lake area. So we're definitely going to be touching those numbers. And if you believe in the theory of a full moon, I think there's a full moon on the next 4 days. So, okay, question next one for Kim, producer that was looking at fall weed control. And when he was strike cutting, he was leaving some weeds like this. And he was just wondering how much regrowth should he look at after he's cut them before he starts going out to spray?
Kim, you're on mute. I'm not sure if you're at your computer.
Sorry. No, I'm on my phone and I had thought I unmuted it, but I didn't. I'm so sorry. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, lots of I'd give it a couple weeks if I could. You got to watch when you read labels. Sometimes they'll say allow 4 to 6 weeks of regrowth. I don't think that's attainable. Lots of times we run out of season by the time that comes. So I think as long as you've got a decent amount of regrowth and you can see that there's some new leaves coming, you want there to be some active regrowth. So we've been lucky this year. We've had quite an early harvest so far. We're just at September 2nd and we've got an awful lot done already. And we've had good growing conditions. So I do think we've got time to let those weeds grow. They've got some moisture. We've definitely got some heat, maybe not in the next few days, but we've had some heat already and we will be having some more heat coming up. And so honestly, I think a couple of weeks. And then as long as you've got enough regrowth, as long as you've got enough new green material to spray, then I think you can go from there.
Okay. And on this slide, I put the picture of you holding that water hemp. How's the season been going for you with that?
Yeah. Well, I actually, I'm still looking for water hemp samples to send away. I just need to know what RM they're from. If anybody has some suspicious pigweeds, even if we're not sure it's water hemp, but we just think it's a really big pigweed, we're not sure, I would still like to be able to send them away for testing because I still have a limited amount of testing that I can do. It is free for me, anyways, not for farmers if they send it to a lab. But if it comes in through me, we can get it tested, whether or not it is water hemp or palmer or one of the other pigweed species. We'll know what species it is for sure. We also can do some quick testing for herbicide resistance to groups 2, group 9, that's glyphosate, group 5, that's atrazine and Sencor, and then also the group 14s. So we would have some idea of what level of resistances are in those plants if they turn out to be water hemp or palmer amaranth. So if anybody has some, we know there's lots out there and it's moving into new areas all the time. And so please get a hold of me. Let me know. I just need a very small amount of leaf tissue, just fresh leaves. Like new leaves are good. We need some good DNA is what we need. We need some nice, good leaves that are in good shape and we don't need a lot of them. So if anybody would like to get some suspicious pigweeds tested, I would love to help with that.
Okay, good. So so if anybody has some and they want to send to Kim or get a hold of one of the crop extension specialists, then we can get them to Kim. So
right.
Okay. Put this couple slides up here. This is for wheat and this is for canola. last week we had a lot of grain going into the bins that was dry, but the temperature of the grain was extremely high. And just a caution to a lot of the producers, the way things go now, it doesn't take long to fill those bins, and you're putting in a lot of grain at a high temperature. So keep an eye on them, because that temperature of the grain does still stay fairly high in the bin, and it would be good to cool that grain down. So if you're putting it in an air bin or have the ability to put air on it, definitely do, because if you can bring the temperature of the grain down to what the temperature is outside the bin, then that'll be good, safe storage. But the longer you leave it at that high temperature, the days of safe storage could be limited, because you could get some hot spots showing up in that grain. So just a slide to remind everybody that just because you're putting it in dry doesn't mean it's in good keeping condition. So, and again, just some things for why you put the aeration on. You can basically, it's to cool the grain down. You want to cool the grain down because when you put, especially cereal crops, you put them into a bin, there's not many spaces between that grain, and they kind of insulate themselves from the outside temperature. So that's why it stays warm. So if you can blow some cool air through there, that would be just good to bring it down to the right temperature. Last week, we mentioned the BMP 4700 program that's been announced for areas that are short of water and need livestock water supplies. This is a little bit more information. The program is a first come, first case basis. So you need to get your applications in if you're in one of the areas that is eligible. Areas that are eligible are right here, listed here, and there also is a 1-800 number to call to see if you are eligible, if you think you are, or if you want to know maybe why you aren't in an area. There's the number to call. The program is for wells, dugouts, different components or pipelines and stuff like that. So there are several different ways you can do it, or different programs, or different systems you can set up, I should say. So definitely, if you're in one of those areas, take a look at that. And again, it's first come, first serve. 50% of the costs related to the eligible expenses, which are there. While we still have everybody on, a question did come in, and I thought maybe we would see what you guys have any comments on. The question is, do you have any idea what percentage of farmers leave the stubble and don't work it in the fall? So I'll start with Marla, if she's still there. Anne, you want to give that a shot? Okay, I might have lost a few of the people. So what I'm going to do is I'll answer it myself. I think when you look at fall tillage, you probably see the majority of the tillage happening on the eastern side of the province in the heavier soils. So once you start moving west and get into a lot of the minimum zero till areas, I think there's very few areas that are doing tillage. I think a lot of the tillage maybe happens in areas where there is some issues that producers want to take care of. If you do see any tillage, it'll be a fertilizer application in those areas, whether it be anhydrous or whether it be a fall fertilizer application. So I would say the eastern side of the province does more tillage than the western side, and I guess that's kind of what I think of that anyway. So, special crop disease and variety evaluation tour happening in the central region on September the 9th at Carmen, and then there's going to be 3 more happening. One in the Interlake on the 11th, eastern region on the 16th and the southwest on the 18th. And those meetings are going to be looking at sunflower disease issues and control. Maybe we'll even talk about Avian, the new product for getting rid of birds. We'll also be talking about corn and flax. So if you're interested in one of those days, there's the locations, and they'll start at 9 in the morning and go till dinner time. There's the crop extension specialist for the province. So if you've got any questions or you've got some samples you want to send to Kim to see if they're to get identified, definitely you can get a hold of us and we can get them in for you. Our livestock people, again, if you're in an area that you're looking, you're having some water issues, you can contact them. They can get you more information. Or if you want to do some feeding programs for this winter and do some feed testing, definitely get a hold of them and they can go through things with you. Our Manitoba hay listing, I would imagine, is starting to get fairly busy. There's more and more producers figuring out if they have hay for sale now. So definitely check there. Also, I see a lot of straw being baled. So if you're looking for straw, it could also be on there as well. Crop residue burning program is now on. So if you're looking at burning, make sure you check the authorizations for the day. And if you're in RMs that require permits, make sure you have one before you start. The MASC service centers and their locations throughout the province, soon to be opening in Shoal Lake and Virden. So keep your eyes and ears open for when those offices will be opening. And my contact information and Lori's contact information. And thanks for attending. Thanks for the panel. And join us next week, September the 10th, for our next edition of CropTalk.